What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. Today, we are going to just talk about a quick little interesting topic that Kyle and I found to be a little intriguing. So, LeBron James and his two sons, Bryce and Bronny, are taking high school basketball by storm. And today, LeBron James came out and said that he wanted to play not only with Bronny, who is the older of his two sons, but potentially even Bryce. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he pretty much said he's got a couple of more good years left in him, and he believes that he can play up to a point where he has played with both of his kids. So, Kyle, I'm just going to ask your opinion here. Do you think that it's even possible for LeBron James to potentially last another 4 good years in the NBA in order to play with both of his sons?
I think it's possible that LeBron's going to be able to make it to 41 years old because as of right now, LeBron is 37. He turns 38 in December. And when it comes to both of his kids, Bronny is 17, so he's a senior this year. He'll graduate in the upcoming spring. I believe Bryce is 15, so there's a couple years for Bryce to be able to graduate high school first and then possibly play collegiate basketball after. Bronny has already received offers from multiple colleges like Ohio State, Oregon, Kentucky, I mean, just to name a few. So it seems to me that out of the two kids, Bronny's probably going to be the one that LeBron could potentially play with, simply just because if Bronny does make it to the NBA, he's only probably legitimately 2, maybe 3 years tops away from making that a reality. When it comes to Bryce specifically, Bryce is probably closer to 4 to 5 years when it comes to being a potential NBA player because, well, first, Bryce has to finish high school. Then he's got to compete either in collegiate basketball or international basketball for a year, and then possibly end up on an NBA team after that. So if you kind of take that into account, Bryce would be 19, 20 years old at that point. Braun would be 42 years old at that point. And it just seems like to me that I don't think that Bryce is going to be able to play with his father just because I think that age is going to become a factor when it comes to LeBron in that specific case. And also, there's another thing that I kind of have to throw out here, too. I understand that there's a lot of talk about Bryce and Bronny making it into the NBA, and I still kind of envision that scenario for both of them. It's just how viable are they going to be? Because early on, I don't really see both of them being quote unquote like major superstars that are going to take the league by storm when they first come into the league. And there may be a good chance that both Bronny and Bryce could potentially just be G League type players. Now, could they make it all the way up to an active roster in the NBA? Absolutely. I think both of them have a skill set to work with that could put them on an NBA roster. But Bronny's more athletic as a guard. He doesn't really possess his father's just explosiveness that he had when LeBron was in high school. But Bryce is kind of the interesting one because Bryce is taller. He's almost as tall as his dad at this current moment in time. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, I think Bryce is somewhere around 6'5", 6'6", and he's only 15. There's a very good chance that he could be taller than LeBron by the time that he finishes growing. And when you kind of tie those factors in together, overall, I think there's a decent shot that LeBron could play with Bronny, but Bryce is a stretch to me, and that's just kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Just because, as of recent years, LeBron James has been prone to injury. We all know that LeBron James spends well over $1 million on just his overall health and bodily care every single season, and he is more than likely probably the one of the more healthy athletes out there in the world in terms of just overall taking care of himself, body fat, and all those different subjects. Uh, but I agree with Kyle completely. We're looking at 4 to 5 years before Bryce can even touch the NBA court if drafted, if making an active roster. And if, Bronny and Bryce aren't even drafted to the same teams or they're not signed to the same team, does that mean that, LeBron James is going to leave the team that Bronny's on? Is LeBron James going to try to get his two sons on the same team? I feel like there's going to be a lot of meddling involved because he's going to want to play with both. And depending on where he is in his career, if his health is still viable, it's just going to be too much for me to believe and get on that bandwagon. I do truly believe that Bronny is definitely going to happen because realistically, we're looking at 2 seasons here. Bronny's got to finish up this year, and by that time, we'll be going into the playoffs of the 2023 season. And then, of course, by the time he goes into college for that coming fall, this time next year, LeBron James still has that year left in Los Angeles on the extension that he just signed. So, realistically, at the end of his 2-year deal with the Lakers, he will be open to free agency yet again. And who's to say that he doesn't just go wherever Bronny ends up and then they try to tag Bryce along? But again, just because of the timing factor, just because of how far along it's going to be within Bron's career, I don't think it's going to be possible to play with both. I think it's going to be possible with his first son. If it does happen, I would be surprised and I would be utterly shocked just because that will put LeBron James, like Kyle said, at 41, 42 years old. We all know that Michael played in his 40s, but Michael had taken 2 breaks, obviously retiring 2 times. And we all know that at the end of the day, Michael wasn't exactly in full basketball shape when in Washington. His career numbers dropped significantly. You can tell that, his physical attributes had obviously dwindled as he's gotten older. Whereas LeBron James is still jumping 35, 40 inches off the floor. So who's to say that he still can't play at a more minimized role later in his life? So right now, I'll say no, but for the long haul, if it ends up happening, I really wouldn't really be too shocked.